Right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another Fans React Friday. After yet another eventful week in the life of a Sunderland supporter. Obviously, you've got myself, Johnny, tonight, and joining me tonight, we've got Dom and we've got Ben. And at some point, we are hoping Gary's going to be joining us, so we'll wait and see if he can access his new fangled Wi-Fi connection in the car park. That one remains to be seen. So, Dom, how are you doing tonight, mate?
Not so bad. It's a bit too hot for folk like me, but other than that, I'm having a very good day.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling the heat a bit, aren't we? What about you, Ben, mate? How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I was trying to survive in 30-degree heat, but it's not too bad. And it's nice to be able to say, Johnny, the headset has returned.
Yes.
That's just made the week, mate, to be fair.
Yeah, it's been an emergency last-minute headset scenario with a bit of technical difficulties with the Bluetooth on the AirPods.
The headset and the shirt, mate, it's a match made in heaven.
Well, the headset shirt combo is obviously a real fashion statement, but I'm a trendsetter. What can I say? And good evening to everyone who's watching. I can see we've already got David Joblin and Joanne Punchin, and now Morgan Gray commenting in the chat. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see people joining us for a Fans React Friday on National Mackem Day, I think, is it?
National Mackem Day?
It is.
No better time for it, is there? So, yeah, good evening, everyone, and welcome. So, we're going to get straight into it. I think we'll tackle the week chronologically. So, going back to last weekend, we obviously secured our first 3 points of the new season. 3-2 win away at Bristol City. And in true Sunderland fashion, we don't do things the easy way, managing to go 2-1 behind before pulling it back with goals from Sims and Ross Stewart. So we'll just start with what you've made of the performance. So, Dom, if you want to kick us off, what were your thoughts on the weekend's game?
To be honest, I thought that even before the game, like we said last week on the stream, it's never easy with Sunderland. And obviously when we go down to Ashton Gate, it's one of those games where you know that there's going to be goals galore, especially how we took the lead so early on in the game and they pinned us back and then they took the lead. You could tell very early on that it was going to be a goal fest. So I believe Sims, straight away, it looks like a player to me. I was very impressed with what I saw. I also thought Stewart looked a bit more himself in this game as opposed to Sunday's game against Coventry. I think overall there's problems. Obviously, you don't want to be conceding any goals, never mind 2. And there was times where we did look a bit sloppy, but I think in the league that we're in, the Championship, you've just got to, it doesn't really matter how you win. All that matters is just you've got results, and especially how we could have won on Sunday, but obviously we didn't. There was that thing of, right, we've got to get a win on the board against Bristol, no matter what happens. So I was just happy for us to have got the win. We've got 4 points on the board out of a possible 6, and to be honest, I like in the start that we've got so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like you say, it's just getting points by hook or by crook. Coming up into a new division, we can't be too picky, can we? We've got to just take them as they come. Ben, what did you think? Agreeing with what Dom's saying, or did you have a different take on things?
No, yeah, it was. I wouldn't have taken the point, to be honest. I would have thought, every game's a tough game in the Championship, so a point away from home would have pleased me very nice. I mean, we were talking last week, weren't we, if Neil was going to make any changes to the lineup. Obviously brought Sims in, and probably one of the best debuts in a Sunderland shirt you could ask for, really, from him. Like Dom said, he's certainly got a bit of ability, and he showed that very well. I'm liking, I'd love to see that front three a little bit more often now, that Pritchard, Stewart and Sims. I think that could be, the deadly SAS, so hey, you like that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I think it's worth talking a bit about obviously Sims and Stewart. First time they've played together. Sims' first appearance for us at all. Started the game, which I think, it came as a bit of a surprise to me. I didn't think we'd see him put straight into the starting 11 for that game. But obviously, it's proved to be a cracking decision from Alex Neil. Took both goals well, I thought. Obviously, the first one, great finish from outside the box. Second one through the keeper's legs, I think, wasn't it? Both, really nice clinical finishes. And I think he's got quite a lot to his game as well. He's not just a sort of fox in the box player. He's obviously big, quick, strong, seems to have quite good feet. So I was definitely really impressed with him. And it would be quite nice if him and Stewart could form a bit of a partnership up front. Obviously for naming purposes of the SAS, but also, I think it's last season, obviously we've relied quite heavily on Stewart, getting all them goals. So it would be nice if we could share the burden around a bit. And it just means if Stewart has an off day, we're not toothless going forward like we could have been at times last season.
Yeah.
Dom, what were your particular thoughts on the new man?
I'll honesty hour. I didn't actually get a stream of the game, so I had to play by ear. But from the highlights I saw, it's just when you can tell with some players that they are a natural born forward and not the ones who have just been pushed up the pitch. And for me, Ellis Sims is one of those players where he just looked, everything he seemed to do seemed right. I never really had to ask questions of what he was doing from what I saw. Especially with, like you say, if Stewart does have an off day, it's nice to know that we have someone else to fall back on instead of just as we did last season in the Championship, and even you could argue the season before with he who must not be named. It's nice to have potentially two strikers who could be on the board as frequent as each other instead of just, take Stewart out of the team, there's our main source of goals gone. It's just, if they do manage to build a partnership, like you say, the SAS, I think it would help us going forward through the season, because if one of them gets injured, at least we've got the other one.
Yeah, 100%. It's always nice to not have all your eggs in one basket. Ben, what are your thoughts on the new look strike partnership?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, you can't not be excited after watching that game. I mean, obviously I only saw the highlights, but they look like they've got that chemistry already. The two of them, and then obviously you add in that very, very substantial chemistry that Pritchard and Stewart have got already. You just feel like as the season goes on, it's only just going to get better and better. And I think really the problem now is for Neil is thinking, obviously we've got all these tactics and formations up the sleeve. If you want to play three at the back, if we play, 4, whatever it is, 2 up front, just the one. He's got a bit of a headache, I think, but obviously, players go out of form and all of this and injuries can happen and all of that. So it'll be interesting to watch. But look, if it continues as it's going at the minute, I think,
Yeah, it's definitely promising.
10,
it's hot takes already. 9 minutes into the stream, we're talking about finishing in the top 10.
You got to have a bit of confidence, haven't you? You've got to be enthused and think, I know it's only one game, don't get me wrong, but, you can't not get excited when you see that sort of partnership already forming.
Yeah, I think as well, I think you mentioned Pritchard already having that sort of connection with Stewart. I think really when you look at the attacking options we've got, that end of the pitch, you've got Pritchard, you've got obviously Sims and Stewart, you've got Roberts, you've got Clark. You've got quite a lot of players battling for not that many positions. I think really sort of at the top end of the pitch, we're about as well stocked as any team outside the top 6. Maybe even a couple of teams who will be in the top 6 at the end of the season. But obviously, the rest of the squad probably not quite at that level just yet. Touching on the rest of the squad, obviously, Dom, you mentioned, we did concede a couple of goals against Bristol City, which was a little bit disappointing because defensive solidity has been sort of one of the key changes that Neil sort of brought to the team when he came in. What did you make of the defensive display? Did you think we kind of were our own enemies at times, or think maybe it's a little bit of bad luck? Ben, what do you reckon?
I mean, when you look at the goals back and you just think, just 2 massively sloppy goals, and we came away with the 3 points, which is, fabulous. But I think if we'd have got a draw out of that game, Neil would have been absolutely going crazy. And I mean, playing Sirkin at centre half on that left-hand side, yeah, the alarm bells were ringing early doors, but they manage well. Obviously, Ballard and Bath. I think that's going to be a nice little partnership. Hopefully for the rest of the season, we've got Wright on the bench. I don't see why Sirkin played there. If you want a centre half there, we've got one. Put him on that left hand side. But Neil's the man, isn't he? And he certainly knows what he's doing. But yeah, just 2 sloppy goals really. They'll be looking at them throughout the week and seeing what they need to do, and I mean, it's one of them because the goal we can see against Coventry, that was just an absolute world-class finish.
Yeah.
One of the goal of the season contenders already. So from 1 week having to be beat from a world-class finish to then conceding them 2 sloppy goals. I'm not saying alarm bells are ringing, but I think it'll be thinking, right, something needs to be, just sort of solidified up a little bit. But, that comes with time. Ballard's just come straight in. He looks fab, by the way. Looks like he's going to get better every game. So, no, there's still time, and obviously, transfer window if needed. I don't think so, but no, it'll take time to gel. But I'm not too worried. I don't think Neil should be either.
Yeah, Dom, what are your thoughts? Are you sharing Ben's optimistic outlook?
Yeah, I think he's got it spot on that. I think that sometimes it is the same old story that we can look shaky. I think especially when we go 1-0 up, throughout the years, we've always looked very vulnerable. But I think there isn't a Sunderland fan out there who isn't convinced already by Ballard. I think he's already solidifying a place as a fan favourite 2 games into the season, especially with pre-season. I thought he looked very convincing during that. I think, yes, we're not always going to be 100% convincing, even judging by the fact that we conceded 2 goals, never mind if you watched the full performance. I think that you can never be 100% defensively sound. You're always going to make that tiny little mistake that perhaps defensive coaches will nitpick or managers will nitpick at. You're never going to have 100% consistency, even if you get a clean sheet. So I don't think anyone should be particularly worried. I think we've got players there who can be defensively sound, and I agree with you that I think that Ballard and Bath are going to make a good partnership as the season goes out. But at the end of the day, if we're not losing the games, obviously you want to be as tight as you can at the back, but if you're not losing games, you should be obviously doing something right. Obviously, that's up to the attackers as well as the defenders, but I think so long as we're creating the chances to get forward and we are actually showing signs of having a good defence, then I don't think we should be particularly worried, because as much as we conceded 2 goals, I thought overall we actually looked quite well.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you make about the fact you're not going to get 100% consistency. I mean, even the best teams in the world have off days, and Man City will concede goals and Liverpool drop points against Fulham. It happens to everyone. The main thing is just trying to keep those down to a minimum. And you've got to ride your luck at times. It's something that I think a lot of our fans will need to get their heads around, is that stepping up a division, you're going to see mistakes creep in. There'll be times where we'll get lucky, and there'll be times where we don't, and silly mistakes give away goals. But I think I'd agree with both of you that there's nothing to be overly, nothing to panic about just yet. Just before we move on, I'll just show a couple of comments from the live chat. So we've got DJ Sizzler Watson talking about Stewart and Sims partnership, saying, you have to go back to the Reedy days until you had a front 2 gel like Quinn and Phillips. If these 2 lads are half as successful as them,
I'll take that.
I would take that. It's a good point, though. It does feel like a long time since we've had any sort of real partnership up that end of the pitch. We've had centre half partnerships and players who've had good relationships. McGeady and he who must not be named a couple of seasons ago, a prime example. But it feels like a while since we've had 2 out and out strikers who've played together, and I'm all for it. I love to see stuff like that. I showed Adam French before agreeing with the Ballard praise. I think a lot of our fans are showing him a lot of love, which is nice to see in his fledgling Sunderland career. On the subject of the transfer market, we've got David Joblin talking about perhaps a little bit too much optimism talking about battling for the Premiership in a few years. But saying another goalkeeper, another right back and left back, midfield player and another striker. Obviously, we'll get on the subject of the transfer market shortly, but just a little flavour of where the fan opinion is. And then on the topic that we're going to be coming on to just now, glad we're out the cup, and also Neil be able to see who's championship material and who's not. So we've got to talk about it. Wednesday night, live for the nation on Sky Sports. 11 changes, 2 disappointing goals, and dumped out of the Carabao Cup at the earliest opportunity. What were your thoughts? Are you particularly bothered? Do you not really care? Were you impressed with players? Were you disappointed with players? Talk to me, Dom. What's your opinion?
I've never really been a fan of cups, which is controversial because I think that everyone should always treat every game. You want to win every game, but when you're in the situation that I think we're in, I think I'm glad to be out of it. Just focus. Every season we were in League One, bar maybe last season when we had a bit of a Carabao Cup run, which I would have liked to seen us progress, but at the end of the day, we were never beating Arsenal, even with if Broadhead was fit. We'll get on to him later.
Yes.
I just think that we do need the league is the main focus. As much as the optimism and pessimism is widely sparse amongst our fans, most people think that we're going to do mid-table. I don't think we need any distractions. As much as, yes, I would love to say that we can win every game, we need to get a little bit of a cup run in there, maybe see how far we can go. I think what he's done, you could tell by the team that he fielded that he wasn't really that interested, because if he was as interested as some of our fans would be, he would have fielded a stronger team, but it's clear that he was obviously got eyes on QPR. I didn't. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't watch the game at all. I was just off the radar. But I did see the goal. I did, and I saw the first goal, and it was an absolute corker. Like, well, it's fair enough. What can you do about it?
Yeah.
And to be honest, from what I saw on social media, people did seem upset about the performance, but it's also the fact of the second team, the main recurring theme was that the B team isn't good enough. So if we get injuries, which you will, every team gets injuries throughout the season, you've got to have worthy replacements. And the recurring theme seems to be that no one really seems to fit that bill of being good enough to step up. Say if Pritchard gets injured, which we thought was going to happen in the first game of the season, we need someone who's going to walk straight in, and you're never going to get a player as equal as Pritchard in our squad as of right now, I think. So we need someone who's going to be able to step into that team and do as much as they can whilst Pritchard is out. And I think it goes for any position, really. Like we were talking about strikers, defenders, every position on the pitch is just as important as the other. And I think as much as Bass did get brought in to be a second keeper, I thought that no one's really going to have the confidence that Patterson does, seeming that he's coming off the back of an 18-game unbeaten run in the league. So no one, you could have chucked Manuel Neuer and gone, I don't think he would have had the confidence that Patterson has, especially when you're thinking, if you're in Bass's shoes, right, you're going to get brought in for the cup games, and every other game when Patterson needs a rest, you're not really going to think, right, this is my time to shine. He knows what his job is. But I think just sloppiness isn't an excuse, I think, especially as it's just the B team. It's good to have depth. And if the players that are squad players aren't looking good enough, then it does ring alarm bells, I think. Yeah,
I think certainly, like for myself, I think that was the main sort of negative takeaway from the game was, like you say, the result doesn't really matter. We're never going to win the League Cup this season, are we? Less games, fewer games, fewer distractions. But it was quite disappointing to see players who I think a lot of us thought do have the quality to step into the team when needed. Even the likes of Patrick Roberts, who's obviously a quality player, didn't look great. I don't think there were very few players who came out with any sort of credit. And like you say, it's a long season, 46 games. Plus, a couple of cup games here and there. You're going to need rotation. You're going to need rest. You're going to have injuries, and you would like to see a bit more from the second string. Having said that, I do think it's difficult when it's the entire 11 that changes. There is going to be no cohesion really on the pitch because they don't play together. They might train together. They might play in training matches with each other. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I don't think you can write people off based on that game. But like you say, I do think alarm bells. Ben, what do you think? Have you got any optimism to save us, or are you going to be joining the negativity hype train?
I mean, it was. I think the most annoying thing for me with the game was that Sheffield Wednesday didn't really have to play well to beat us.
Yeah,
I think we were just so. It looked like a team that had literally just been put together. You could tell from the first minute that this team had never played a minute with each other. Everyone looked nervous. Usually under Neil, our passing's been nice and crisp and quick. I mean, obviously that goes down to players as well, but trying to play that style of play as well, the players just weren't up for it. And we got bullied in midfield. It was horrible. Sheffield Wednesday had a 3 in the midfield, and 09 and Matete were just like lost.
Yeah.
So I think for me, just disappointed really, because all these fringe players we talk about, the likes of 09 and even Elise, Bailey Wright, I think they didn't do too much wrong, but I just don't think Sheffield Wednesday had to do a lot to beat us.
Yeah,
which is the most disappointing thing. But bigger picture, I'm not bothered, to be honest. I think it was a bit of a feeler for Neil. Seeing how this squad gets on. Didn't do what he wanted. We'll just move on. He'll know where he needs to strengthen, and I think we all do after that match. But I don't want to be all negative. I'll say that positive in there. I think I might get a bit of stick for this, but I thought Diamond wasn't too bad. Honestly, I thought the runs that he was making off the ball, every time he got the ball, he looked sharp, and he looked like he wanted to try and do something with the ball. Obviously, when we've got Hume and whoever, Sonner on that left-hand side, trying to whip balls in to a 5'8" Jack Diamond against 3 centre-halves.
Might as well stick you up front, Ben.
Exactly. And I've got a knee with a flipping torn ACL. It's hopeless. You've got to try and play to the strengths of your squad at the time. But no, I didn't think he did too bad. He didn't have many opportunities, but he certainly looked lively. I think Hume was okay, reasonably solidish.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't our day. Wasn't our day. Wasn't meant to be. But move on. Focus on the championship without a doubt.
Yeah, I think you touched on Try Hume there. I thought he had a decent game. Obviously, you can't really sort of change the game on your own from sort of right wing back that much, and like you said, a few times that he did manage to get forward and put what I thought was some half decent balls in the box. When you don't have Stewart, you don't have Sims on the pitch, there just isn't a target to hit, is there? And it's like you say, it's just not going to work. I think the only sort of real concern I would have in terms of sort of tactically or any level of criticism to go to the manager, because like you say, he'd clearly written the game off, so you can't read much into substitutions and that sort of thing. Was like you say, if you're going to stick Diamond up front, his strengths are clearly he got a little bit of pace. He was making some sharp runs. He's quite direct. So to then set up with wing backs didn't quite make sense to me. And it feels like he was very much sacrificing the top end of the pitch to give these players a game in the defensive system that we play. Which to me just felt like a bit of a strange move because, like you said, it meant that Chef Wedge, they didn't really have to do anything to control the game. They just sort of stroked the ball about, kept hold of possession. The first goal was an absolute screamer. You're not going to stop them. I think it was unlucky as well that Patrick Roberts was the closest man to him when it fell to him outside the box, because your right wing is not who you want closing somebody down in defence. But even their second goal, I think, came from really poor bit of play at the back from us that started it. And they also had a chance near the end where Winchester sort of got in a bit of a tangle, and that's so probably should have done better and sort of just couldn't quite get out of his feet. So yeah, it was disappointing that he seemed to have set us up to focus on the sort of defensive end of the pitch, and that was where we looked probably the most shaky, really, because the midfield was non-existent. You know, O'Nien, I love the guy, but that was not a good game. that was not a good performance from him.
Yeah, but Johnny, you're the leader of the, Luke O'Nien
I'm the Luke O'Nien fan club, fully paid up member, but it might have to be the Luke O'Nien right wing back fan club from now on, because on that showing, I don't think he's quite got the quality on the ball to be dictating games in the Championship.
Do you know what I was thinking when I was watching the game at about half an hour in? I turned to my dad. I said, "Do you know who we need on the pitch here?" And he said, "Oh, who?" I said, "Corey Evans."
Here we go.
No.
Honestly, I did, because
we're not having the Corey Evans fan club.
He just keeps it ticking, and we had nothing in midfield. O'Nien and Matete were just running around like flipping headless chickens for half the game.
Yeah.
It was just, there was nothing in that midfield, and that's what really frustrated me the most.
Yeah.
Obviously Wednesday had some big fellas in that midfield, but still, it's like these players were starting for us last season, and Sheffield Wednesday is still a League One club. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we put 5 past them, didn't we, at the Stadium of Light over Christmas?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a good point actually that you raised about the midfield there, and when you think about the balance of the midfield, O'Nien and Matete seem to be very similar sort of players in that they both want to get up and down the pitch. They want to be very involved, and they want to be sort of, very box to box, industrious players. Whereas when our starting midfield, when you've got, if it's Neil and Evans, for example, you've got one who can sit, one who's a bit more expansive. You've got a bit more of a, 2 different sort of players. And to come on the subject of the transfer market, possibly, to me, that does raise questions about, where the makeup of the team's going if any injuries do occur, because when the options you've got to bring in are both a bit limited and very similar to each other, it does, again, ring some alarm bells if we get a couple of midfield injuries, which is definitely not out of the realms of possibility. Yeah. If we start a few games with O'Nien and Matete as the only midfield pivot we've got on that show, and I think, Dom, that face might just about sum it up. What do you reckon then, Dom? I'll come to you. Do you think, how much transfer activity do you think we need, and where would you most like to see targeted?
I think the only one out of all the positions that needs the most interest, I would say, is the midfield, because I'm happy with Stewart and Sims being the 2 main forwards. I would have liked to see maybe another one come through the door, but we've got plenty in the youth team, and obviously we've got people like Diamond, if needs be. He's like the emergency, if bottom of the barrel. But I think defence, it all looks okay to me. Obviously we've got Ballard, we got brought in. Elise has started a little bit shaky, but we've got him and Wright who are on the bench. We've obviously got Danny Bath, we've got Hume and Serkin. I think the midfield, like we've discussed in the show, is if Pritchard gets injured, your only real replacement, O'Nien and Matete. And as much as I love them both, it's just not, I don't think it's good enough for the standard that we're trying to be at. Obviously, being the promoted club, you're obviously going to have that pressure anyways. But the fact that we are such a big club, you've obviously got that added pressure onto it. So when you think of where we want to be as a club, we want to be pushing for mid-table, really, especially how a few people have us to go down. We need that consistency in the midfield that if someone does get injured, we've got enough quality on the bench to look to in our time of need. And I think with the players we've got at the moment, we don't really have that. So I would be happy if the transfer window ends tomorrow and tonight we brought in maybe 1 or 2 midfielders, I'd be satisfied. I don't know about you, but I think those are realistically the place we should be looking at. If we have to bring in one more person, it's got to be a midfielder.
Yeah, so midfield, the prime area for you. I think a lot of fans would share that sentiment. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt we need a midfielder, absolutely bang on. You know, a real sort of just a proper shithouse centre mid. You know what I mean? Tall, strong. You know, just a bruiser because. You know, Dan Neil can't really do that, and Corey Evans, he's not got the height or the build for it, really. As good as they are in midfield together, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like sometimes for different games, we need that dynamic. And we know that Neil's not going to play Winchester in midfield. He's a centre half or he's in the reserves, you know, so we definitely need a centre mid. I'd probably be keen to bring in a left back. I think if anything happened to Sirkin, you know, I mean, obviously we got Hume and that, and Noel Huggins is obviously still on the injury list for a while, isn't he? So, you know, Gucci will be playing left back and Hume will be playing right back.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen Gooch play left back as well,
Oh,
haven't we?
he has, yeah. And I mean, he's like, I mean, they're like all a little bit the same, sort of like Gucci and O'Nien. Sometimes the technical ability is not there, but you know when they play, they give 100%, and they'll try and do the best job that they can for the match. So yeah, a left back, centre midfielder. Other than that, I think we could be all right. I mean, the strength and depth for our wingers we've got very nice. I think up front we could do all right with. I mean, just sort of going back to what you were saying, Dom. You know, if Pritchard gets injured, you know, who are we going to have? I think. I mean, obviously he's not going to be as good, but we know that Embleton can play in the middle as long as he plays in that forward role. We know he's got a bit of ability. So obviously that's worst case scenario because Neil likes to play him on the right hand side sometimes or sitting back in the midfield, which probably for him, he knows that's not his right position. He knows he wants to be further forward. But a couple of things in there, but I think for me, centre mid and left back without a doubt.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth investing in at least one fullback. I'd like to see. I mean, like Dom said, if we could only bring one player in, I think we'd probably all agree it needs to be a central midfielder, based on the evidence of the opening couple of weeks of the season. But like you say, Ben, if Certain gets injured, or even if he just needs to spell out the team, because we saw last season there was periods where he struggled, and especially when you've got young players that you're relying on, you want to be able to take them out when they need a rest. Otherwise, you're just going to sort of mentally fry them. I would have liked to see a right back come in, but if Tri Hume is going to stay at the club and get minutes, then I'm much less worried about that. But on the subject of what sort of midfielder to bring in, you've said what I think every Sunderland fan's been saying for about 15 years: tall, strong, powerful, dominant central midfield player to come in.
Do you know what? When we had Yanin Villa in that midfield, I know it's just a little bit of a touchy subject, but he was just the bill, for someone we haven't had at Sunderland for a while, and since Catmull's left, we've got no one with that sort of, not so much the leadership, but just the tenacity and just the willing to try and get after them. I mean, there's a difference the way that O'Nien and Matete did it, and then there's a way that obviously Catmull had his fair share of, Reds, as we all know, but he just did it in a different way. And, you look at Kevin Ball, for example. So just someone of that sort of ability in there, but Big Jan, I can't believe we didn't return the phone call.
Oh, God, that still makes me want to weep to this day.
I'm crying my eyes. I want a Friday night. What's wrong with us?
I know. I remember that free kick he scored against Villa.
Oh, Johnny, don't.
What a perler that was. But yeah, like, it's been so long since we've had really that. I mean, obviously we had him via that season, and then we thought we were getting it with Rodwell. The less said about him, the better. I remember back in the day when Alfred and Ndai came to the club, and we all thought, who's this guy? Like 6 foot odd, rapid, mobile. Unfortunately, he just lacked the football ability part of the midfielder package. We're getting a lot of cans for Jan in the chat. Yeah, God, back the recruitment in the Premier League days, man, that was shambolic. But still on the subject of recruitment, actually, I think while we're talking about all these different styles of players you can bring in, something that's not so much a concern, but something that's worth thinking about, I think, is Neil's clearly got his preferred way of playing. He's setting us up with sort of 3 centre halves and the wing backs. It's a bit more of a fluid system than that on paper, but generally that's how he's setting us up. We know we can play 4 at the back if we need to. We've got the players, but I just wonder whether not. I wouldn't describe it as one-dimensional, but I feel like we don't really have too many sort of different types of players in positions. We've got a lot of, like you said, if Pritchard gets injured, Embleton can play in that role. But he's a very similar sort of player, similar build. They both rely on passing and the first touch rather than any sort of like pace or direct dribbling. Roberts and Clark are the opposite of that, where they're both very pacey and dribblers. That's why they, tend to play out wide. Up front, you've got Stewart, who's a big, tall lad who's got a decent touch. Sims has a bit more pace about him, but again, he's a big lad with a decent touch, and they're both most effective, obviously, inside the box. We've touched on the midfield, and then the full-back, wing-back options are a bit limited. We've got Gooch, but even then, Gooch and Hume are two players who probably prefer going forward. They've both got a little bit of pace, and they like to put a ball in the box. I just wonder whether it will be a concern this season to, if there are times we need to try and stretch teams or change the game, or if we start getting found out a little bit, which, can happen if teams work out a way of playing against you. I just think it would be nice to have those sort of different options to come in and sort of shake up the way we play. I know it's easier said than done, and good quality players don't want to come to sit on the bench for half a season. But yeah, I feel like it's almost the downside of having quite a unified recruitment vision is that then you bring in all the players that suit that vision, and you don't really have those sort of almost wild card type players who can come in and just be something completely different. I don't know how you'd go about remedying that. I'm glad it's not my job, but to come on to the subject of a recently snapped up young forward, obviously the man that we all wanted to see come back to the Stadium of Light, I think, Nathan Broadhead, Jason Broadband himself. I think he was sort of that different option that we had at times last season when it wasn't working out. He's very direct, he's quick, and obviously the lad can finish. He knows where the goal is. Recently, of course, signed for Wigan Athletic on a season-long loan after what seemed to be quite a protracted chase from us throughout quite a lot of the summer. Obviously, disappointment to see him go to a direct rival, but do you think we'll regret not sort of moving more forcefully for him, or do you think it'll be just sort of a footnote in the history of the season? Ben, I'll come to you first on that one.
Not for me, personally. I think, obviously Sims has got the size, but, for me, he's an upgrade to Broadhead. And I think where Broadhead didn't have that strength and that little bit of sort of physical nous, should we say, that the likes of Stewart and certainly with Sims now, I think Sims has got more of a whole package than Broadhead. And I think we could get Sims for about 30-odd games a season, whereas with Broadhead, you just know anything can happen. As we saw, he only played about, 15 games for us, so it's one of them. I'm not losing any sleep over not having him back or any of that, But what made me laugh really with him, he says, I want to go somewhere and I want to be playing every game. But Wigan, obviously, we've got Charlie Wyke and they've just signed Ashley Fletcher as well.
Oh, God, Ashley Fletcher.
Is Wigan just a retirement home for our former players? Like, what's going on?
They're the new Stoke City, aren't they?
Is it just the Sunderland reunion club? Like,
yeah, it's for Sunderland players who are sick of red and white stripes. That's what Wigan are.
Yeah, to the blue and white. Yeah, but for me, is he going to play every game for Wigan? Probably not. If Fletcher makes a good start to the season, will he play? Without a doubt. I wouldn't say a proven championship striker, but he knows the league well. He's
experienced, isn't he?
Yes, yeah. Whereas Broadhead, he's not had that. Scored a few clinical goals in League One for us. Don't get me wrong; they're all good goals and some bigger than others. But I'm not losing sleep over him going to Wigan. I think we'll be all right.
Dom, what do you reckon? Are you devastated to be Broadheadless, or?
I think I can live with being Broadheadless. I agree with Ben. I'm not losing any sleep over the fact that he's not in a Sunderland shirt anymore. I think the two things about it that stand out to me is that the fact that he's still getting loaned out at 24, it's sad to see. Like, you almost feel sorry for him. The fact that Lampard said that he wanted to have a look at him, so he kept him on during pre-season, not really letting any clubs have a sniff at him. And then for him to sign a 2-year extension on his contract at Everton and then get loaned out the day after, it makes no sense to me. Like, the fact that whoever's doing his negotiations clearly needs shooting, because that is a terrible bit of business. Personally, if he's going to get loaned out until he's 26, I think his management need to have a word, because when you think about it, he could have come to us. Yes, he does have problems with fitness, and he would probably break his leg riding his bicycle. But when you think about the connection he had, even though he only played so little games with his injury, there was clearly that mutual respect from fans and player that, yes, we liked the look of Broadhead. I thought from when he did play and when he was fit, he did show signs of quality. And like you said, he did score some very important goals for us. So, of course, he's always going to be, if he was linked and he was rumoured, he was always going to be welcomed back with open arms. Like, even there was a lot of Broadhead love come the end of the season for purely the contribution he did for getting us out of League One. So, yeah, there would be some people who would build him giant statues. You would have thought he was a pharaoh, the amount of love he was getting. But at the same time, you do need to think that you can't be signing someone purely because of a past respect to foe. And then you think that when you get to it's such a big step up, League One in the Championship, let's be real. And if you're going to only be playing 15 games a season, the minute you get injured, say you're starting the season well and then you get injured, especially now that we've got Sims, I don't think he would have got his place back. Because when you think about it, I think it's a bit early, personally, to be calling him an upgrade, because we've only seen so little of Sims so far. So for all we know, the goals could run dry. We just never know. But I do agree with the fact that he does look like a upgrade from Broadhead. I'm happy with Sims. I think out of the two, if you told me we could only pick one, I would have personally chose Sims. But I don't think he'll play that much for Wigan either. I think with Fletcher, he knows the league. Broadhead, I think he's completely new to the Championship. I'm not sure if he's played in the division before, but when you think, and you've got he who must not be named there as well, he knows the EFL like the back of his hand. So overall, I think it's just a pure bit of business, not by us really, but by Broadhead's management, because when you look at it, he could have, I think either way, he wasn't getting first team football consistently.
It's just very underwhelming, I think. Isn't it? Like you say, even just looking at it on paper, 24-year-old goes out for X number of loan spell. Like he's off on loan again. He didn't make. I don't think he even played a minute in pre-season for Everton, which like you say, when it's Lampard's keeping him around to have a look at him. I mean, the guy must need a white stick to get about the place if he thinks that's having a look at Broadhead. Like, I mean, it's some transfers you see and you think that makes sense. It suits everybody. All parties seem happy. Club's happy to get a fee and the player's happy to move on. New club gets a good player, whatever. This feels like one where nobody kind of really wins. Everton is probably still paying some portion of his wages, I would imagine, because I don't think Wigan are exactly flush with cash. Broadhead now still doesn't have a permanent home. He's got to make a new start at a new club again, and Wigan aren't exactly crying out for a striker necessarily. So it smacks of just poor business all around. The kind of transfer that we would normally make in all fairness. Final point on the recruitment then, before we move on and look at the game coming up this weekend. Obviously, Broadhead is now a Wigan player for the foreseeable future. Well, the next 9 months anyway. I think most fans would like to see one more sort of striker / forward come in. Do you have any names in mind? And if not, what sort of player would you like us to be looking at? Dom, I'll start with you.
Who's left? To be honest, whoever's left, I'll take. I think earlier in the season, the back end of last season, I would have took like a Tom Lawrence kind of player, someone who knows the EFL, but is proven to score goals. So something that maybe Ashley Fletcher doesn't have. That yes, he scores goals, but he hasn't shown that consistency the whole time. I think as much as people get stick for saying his name, I think Dwight Gale is the perfect kind of striker you need in the Championship. Like a player like him.
I just need to block Dom from the fans react channel now, lads. I'm just going to get rid of this joker, all right?
I know. It's disgraceful. But the stats don't lie. When it comes to the Championship, when you think of clinical Championship strikers, you think of two people. You think of Alexander Mitrovic and you think of Dwight Gale, which recurring theme, obviously.
Yeah, the classic too good for the Championship, but not quite good enough to cut it in the Prem.
Yeah, you just
very Daryl Murphy-esque.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just need someone like that who knows the Championship. He knows how to eat defences for breakfast. You just need someone like that. And I think if there is anyone still left like that on the market, I don't see why we don't have a crack for them.
Yeah. Obviously, I think the one name I've seen us linked with was Lys Mousset, who used to play for Bournemouth and Sheffield United. I think some interaction between him and Kirill on Instagram, which got people talking. I believe he's a free agent at the minute as well. Which you don't want to be hanging your hat on free agents, but I think when you're bringing in a sort of backup or rotation type player, bringing someone in for minimal outlays, it's the least risky option. But like you say, Dom, you want somebody who's a bit more proven and has that sort of consistency where if you look at Mousset's record, he's scored a few goals everywhere he's been, but he's never really had a consistent run as a first choice. He hasn't had a season where he's reached double figures in the league. So, I'd be scratching my head a little bit with that one. I wouldn't say no, I mean, you take another option, but like I said, that's sort of the only concrete link I've really seen, and I'd be a bit underwhelmed by that one. Ben, what do you reckon? How desperate are we?
Well, I mean, it'll always be nice for a bit of cover, just in case, the absolute worst case scenario happens and Sims and Stewart get injured, and then shit would really hit the fan then, where,
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Where are the goals going to come from,
25 from Diamond, mate. 25 goals from Jack
Hey,
Diamond.
do you reckon? You want to put some money on it now, Johnny?
I mean, he might get 25 minutes. I don't know about 25 goals.
I mean, Mousset, body in, I guess. Just the problem is I'm not really too aware of sort of the free agents nowadays.
Yeah.
I feel like all sort of upfront options are a little bit sparse, but there's two that spring to mind for me. I think one of them sort of quite similar to Stewart, but James Collins, Luton.
Yes.
Had a very good couple of seasons, scored a lot of goals, knows the Championship reasonably well. But like you say, he's probably just a carbon copy of Stewart, really.
Yeah. And I think he's in his later 20s now.
I think so, yeah.
And I think McGeady sort of made that throwaway comment. I don't know if you've seen it in I can't remember whether it was a Sunderland Echo or some different paper, but he was talking about Sunderland and he said, "Oh well, they only sign players like spend money on players 24 or younger now." So you would think he probably doesn't fit that sort of model as well, which might be a bit of a negative from the club's point of view.
Probably the other name that I'd throw in is someone that we've had and who we just played against that was on the bench the other week, Antoine Semenyo.
Yeah.
Yes, he's young. He's a little bit raw still, but obviously he didn't play that much for us. But I watched the odd game that he was in. Sort of, I don't want to say Diamond-esque, but he was like...
That's an insult, surely.
Well, yeah, but just a little bit of an upgraded version. If you know
just a little bit, yeah.
Just a tiny little bit.
A lot of pace, just something different because we've got two lumps up front, really.
Yeah.
We haven't got that sort of little sort of
just that little sort of spark to come on and change a game.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, John, I think you were, spot on with what you're saying. About we've got the same types of players everywhere. Sometimes just to have that other player, that different dynamic.
It just keeps teams guessing as well, doesn't it? Because if you know how we're going to play, you can set up to counter it, and we'll still win games because we've got quality in the team. But sometimes you will come up against somebody who's worked you out a bit, and I definitely I'm in full agreement with you there. I would like to see somebody come in who's just that different option. And I'd take Semenyo. I think he's quite highly rated at Bristol City these days. I can't remember whether they turned an offer down or whether there was interest from the Premier League. So I feel like if we were going to go for him, it would be a bit more expensive. But yeah, it's an interesting couple of names to shoot out. Like
they're sort of them type of players, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, someone in that sort of mould.
You're not going to expect Ross Stewart to run in behind from a long ball, are you?
Or if you do expect that, you're going to be disappointed.
Well, exactly. But I still think Sim's going to offer that. He's got a bit of pace about him. But, time will tell. It's only been one game in it, so
yeah. Plenty more football to see from the lads who've come in, definitely. Right, we'll move on from the recruitment now. I think we've covered that quite well. We'll talk about the upcoming game against QPR, which is tomorrow, I think. I should know that. At the Stadium of Light. Very quickly before we talk about the actual game, obviously the club released a statement discussing changes that are going to be made to the matchday experience in the wake of the Coventry game. So there's going to be enhanced searches on away fans to try and sort of beef up the security in that area of the ground until sort of lasting changes can be made. And there's going to be some changes to how the sort of match experience works regarding the roker end of the ground. They're going to try and stop the overcrowding, stop people passing through if they don't have tickets. So just worth bearing in mind for anyone who's going to the game.
Stay down your pig and own end.
So pretty strong pro roker end statements there from Dom.
You can tell I sit in the roker end.
Yeah. I don't think you can really complain about any of that, can you? The club had to act. They mentioned that they've been spoken to by higher authorities about the crowding in the roker end, so sort of backed into a corner, really. I think you can't really criticise that. But yes, so on the subject of the game, we had a comment very early on in the stream from Footy Plays, who is a Luton fan, who is predicting 1-0 to QPR, but a little bit of disrespect towards Coventry and Bristol City, pointing out that we did struggle a bit in those games, which I think it's fair to say that we did have, sticky moments in both games. Arguable whether teams who finished, mid-table and higher are nobodies, but, fair play. So we've got, a bit of a more impartial opinion. And I've just seen a comment coming from Morgan Gray on a more positive note. QPR have a centre-back partnership of Jimmy Dunn and Jake Clark-Salter, two players who we know quite well from their stints at Sunderland, who, especially Clark-Salter, struggled at times. I remember that red card at Middlesbrough.
That was great. That was a work of art. That was beautiful.
That was a belter of a challenge.
It was Catamore-esque, that, wasn't it?
Beautiful.
It was.
So, looking at the game, QPR are a team who have got championship experience in spades. They've been around this level a long time, hovered between the Premier League and the Championship for a while a few years ago. What do you think then? It should be a good test, I think. Ben, I'll come to you first. What's your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, another tough game. They come thick and fast, don't they? When they're in the Championship. So I think every game, I don't think we're going in with, well, certainly maybe a fan perspective, we're not going in with too much confidence. It's one of them. Obviously, one of the best away days I've been to for a while. That QPR away in the Carabao Cup. What a good night that was. But and they tried for it. Sort of half an hour, 25 minutes. They brought the big boys on. That's the past. That was under LJ, wasn't it? But I'm not going to say anything more about that.
Under David Brent.
Oh yeah. But no, they've got some big danger men. You look at Lyndon Dykes.
Yeah, he's a handful, isn't he?
Big lads. So Bat and Ballard, they're going to have a handful with him.
Oh yeah,
You know,
arguably probably Ballard's biggest test so far since coming in. Would you say, like in terms of an actual one-on-one matchup?
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, so far, like you say, because you know there are a lot of big boys in the championship anyway, but
Yeah.
Dykes just stands out. You know, Scottish international. He's got a reputation,
Yeah.
and he's going to want to get into them early as well. So as long
Oh
as
yeah.
Ballard just sort of keeps his composure that he's been displaying, you know, these past couple of games, it should be fine. But Morgan just said it there. Joe Willock as well, got ability, you know. So you just know what it's going to be. You know, 2-1 QPR win, Clark Stoltler and Jimmy Dunn
Yeah.
scoring from corners. The script is already there.
It's written in the stars. Yeah. If there's anything to put money on, it's definitely Clark Salton. It'll definitely bag a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
and kill Ellis Sims in the process.
yeah, elbows flying all over the place. I think is going to be happening tomorrow. I think I'm expecting a physical game. I'd like to see the referee have a bit more control than we've seen from some of the referees in the early days of this season. Because I mean, the ref that we had against Coventry, he really was poor. And you can't blame the referees for any of the results that we've had so far. But I think he's going to need to have a firm hand and keep a grip of the game tomorrow. Otherwise, I think the referee will struggle as much as any of the centre halves or centre forwards. Dom, what do you reckon? Are you confident tomorrow?
I think you have to be, especially as you have said. I don't think there is an easy game we've got this season. You've got to just look at every game as tough. You've got to, as you say, QPR have always kind of been the physical side. They always know how to get into teams. They've got some good players, and obviously they've got Willock in there, Lyndon Dykes. I think even on this day, Ilias Chair can put in a good performance. So there is players to be worried about. Like you say, I think this is going to be my lad's toughest test so far in the season. You've got to be fairly confident in the fact that we have won and we have got points in the bag so far this season, but also the fact that they haven't been that convincing. Obviously, I thought we played well at Bristol, but we did concede 2 goals and we did switch off from time to time. Obviously, some may argue that it doesn't count, but we did lose on Wednesday, so you do need to look at the facts. I think it will be a hard-fought game. I'm with you. I think it's going to be a very physical game as well. But I think with Neil's mentality, I believe that he'll be able to challenge that, get it into them early mentality from QPR. And I'm hoping that we do end up being able to be the stronger side, because I do think we've got some very big physical presences in our teams. We've also got Corey Evans, but you know,
hey, you dog, what's it, matey? Hey,
what can you do?
We're gonna have a rival fan club being set up by Ben at this rate, I think.
Corey Evans' biggest hater, the Corey Evans' biggest lover. I see you, Ben. No, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think you pointed out that we have got some physical presences in the team now, which is makes a change from years gone by. But I think where it'll be interesting to see is, because obviously for us, they're at either end of the pitch. Got Bat and Ballard, who are quite strong and tall at the back. We've got Stewart and Sims up front, but that middle of the park, I think, is where the game's possibly going to be won or lost. You mentioned Chair for QPR. I think he is a decent player. He's got good feet, and he's quite effective. He's not always he's not a very sort of flash player in the mold of a McGeady maybe, but I think he's very good at getting the ball into dangerous areas. So I think we definitely need to watch out for him, and it'll be a good test to see where we're at in terms of sort of the nous that you need, the sort of the mentality and the concentration to see out games like this. Because like you said, Ben, and I think we've all made the point, there are no easy games in this league. They do come thick and fast, and you need to be able to keep your heads and execute a game plan. We've got a lot of positivity in the chat, I've got to say. We've got Acacia. Acacia predicting a 3-1 win.
Confident today.
We've got DJ Sizzler Watson saying 2-0. Morgan Gray 2-1 to Sunderland with goals from the SAS. We've got David Joblin predicting 2-1 win and heading to the top of the tree. So, judging by this, the mood in the ground tomorrow should be quite optimistic.
Can't wait for a 1-0 smash and grab QPR.
It feels like the higher up the divisions we go, the more like the old Sunderland we expect ourselves to become. But yeah, I think I'm with you, Dom. Sort of quietly confident in the sense that we have looked quite good. We've scrapped where we've needed to scrap, and we've showed quality where we've needed to show quality. In terms of the 11, I'm expecting probably the same team that played against Bristol City. I don't really see the need to make any changes. That's why he rested everyone in the week. I think, are we agreeing on that?
I think
Yes.
so.
Yeah, I mean, you don't change your winning teams. The old cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. So yeah, I think unless either of you have any last points that you particularly want to get off your chest, I think we've pretty much covered everything that we need to talk about this week. So yeah, confident mood from the fans in the chat, not so confident from Mr. Carr.
Hey, no, hold on. Look, I'll go with a 2-1. 2-1 win. 2-1
I'm
win.
going 2-1. I'm fancying us to get a 1-0 win. I'd like to see us.
I'm also saying 1-0.
Yeah, see,
I think today might be the day we get a clean sheet. Well, not today, tomorrow, obviously.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see us get a clean sheet on the board, I think, because that's really the only thing that we've kind of lacked, isn't it? But yeah, so great show as always, lads. Pleasure to have you on. Nice to see all the interaction from people in the comments. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. And if you go on the game, safe journey and enjoy the match. And apart from that, we shall see you next week for Fans React Friday. And yes, the outro video needs to play. Oh, you can tell I've not hosted in a while. Me mouse and keyboard skills need a bit of work. But yes, thanks very much for tuning in, everyone. And we will see you next week.